right, or why they maintain their financial advisor. And it was 70% emotional, right? It wasn't because it was a great product or great return or great financial plan. It was because they just liked talking to their advisor, sometimes about many things that had nothing to do with their finances. So what does it come down to? It comes down to relationship. And that's why above and beyond all of this, you got to build good relationships with people. You have to open up an appointment with really good rapport. If you just go in there and you're just trying to do a presentation and think that that's what's going to get you, yeah, a lot of times you'll be okay, but you're never going to really develop a book of business with referrals and great retention unless you can build that rapport. Look, I'm a shy person. I'm introverted. I'm not the life of the party. You guys know that. I'm not, but I don't have an amazing personality, but I know how to build relationships with people. One-on-one, I know how to do that. So that's why I built a book of business. So let's get started on this. So someone says, hey, Adrian, dude, I checked online and you guys are more expensive. I can get a cheaper policy online. Never take that at face value, right? Number one, the majority of the quotes that we give to people are for how many years? 35. That's not really on the marketplace like that, right? So if I'm giving you a 35-year term, and I know very few, if any, companies offer a term policy that long, right away I know you probably quoted for the longest that they had, which was 30. Well, 30 and 35 is a different animal. You guys understand what I'm saying? You don't just say, oh, well, one's 5 years longer. No. You are 40. My policy is going to go until 75. Your other policy is going to go until 70. Think about the cost of those years or the importance of those years, 70 to 75. Those 5 years on the back end are very, very expensive. So if I bring my policy down to 30 as well, then we can have a fair comparison. Here's another thing. I met you. I see. You are overweight. You are on one medication. And best case scenario, I'm going to get you a class 6. And then you went online and told them that you're preferred. And because you're doing an online application, or the person on the phone wants to make that sale, right? They don't care. They just want you to apply. Because just like we know, they know if you get someone to apply, they are going to move forward, even if it's an adverse result, right, or not a great result. They're gonna change the policy to some extent to keep it, right? So that's what they'll do online is they'll lure you in. If you ever heard that commercial on the radio or on TV, and they say that John can get a $500,000 policy for $19 a month. Right. Well, if you listen to the end, it says John is, I don't know how old, 10-year term at Super Preferred Plus. Right? So you just gave someone a quote for 35 years, 500 grand standard because they're overweight, and they're like, well, I heard this was 20 bucks. No, it's not 20 bucks. Your policy is not 20 bucks. So our program, even when you give someone a quote, it defaults to quoting at standard, right? And then Primerica decides if they deserve to be less than that or more, right? So you always have to remind people that we don't really know what you're quoting. We don't know if the rate that you're getting, if that's what you're actually going to get. Ours can change too, but we try to do the best job possible in telling you what it's going to be beforehand. We don't lie and lure you in with a preferred rate and then you come out standard. Next, the premiums can change prior to the term expiring. Now, I don't see this as much. I used to see it a lot back in the day. But New York Life had what they called a guaranteed 20-year term. Right? So sounds good. When you open up, and this is New York Life, it's not like a weird internet company. The term, when you looked at it, it would be years 1 through 10, it would be $50 a month. And then years, this is what it would say in the policy, years 10 through 20, it would be annual renewable, basically. Now, why is it called a 20-year term then? They're saying you're guaranteed to have coverage for 20 years. It's not guaranteed level for 20 years. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so we don't know what you're getting. You just put in 20 years, it says guaranteed 20 years, you're gonna apply for it, you're gonna get it, you don't know what to look for. And here, what do you really have, Sheila? That's not a 20-year term, what is it? It's a 10-year term. Of course it's gonna be cheaper. I can give you a 10-year term too. So there's many things that can change within a policy, and you don't know it because you don't have the policy, you don't have someone to talk to, you're just buying something online. And this is a big one, and we have to learn how to have this conversation with people, which is renewal rates. Right? So, when someone, what's our philosophy? Our philosophy is what? Our philosophy is you are 35 years old, and I give you a 30-year term, and it's going to last until you're 65. But what do I also say? I say, don't worry about it, because as your assets meet and then exceed the value of your life insurance policy, and now you have $2 million saved, this $1 million policy, don't worry about it, because now you're self-insured. So the idea is that you are not going to need insurance past 65 because we've helped you accumulate assets to where insurance is no longer necessary. But here's the thing. At 65 years old, you're very, very sick. I've had clients with dementia. I've had clients that are in the hospital from their second heart attack. These are not stories I'm telling of other people. These are my actual stories. Now, they've paid on a policy for 30 years. It's $1 million. They know and the family knows that they're not going to make it. So are they going to say, oh, well, I'm self-insured, just let $1 million go down the drain? No, they know that policy is going to pay out in the next year or two, so they want to continue the policy from 65 and beyond. It doesn't matter what it costs, because they know they're going to get what? $1 million. But if your renewal rate on that policy goes from $150 to $10,000 a month, guess what? Not everyone has $10,000 a month. But if the Primerica one goes to $1,000 a month, now it's not as cost prohibitive. Does that make sense? So our renewal rates are less. So term 1 is that original term that you're getting. Term 2, right? That is where we're really going to compete with your other policy. If you look at AIG policies, they're really cheap on a 20-year term. Look and see what happens after that 20th year. They make it so there's no chance in hell that you are going to be able to keep that policy past the 20th year. So they only have to account for that first 20 years of you having the policy. With us, our renewal rates are very competitive, so we're accounting for you potentially renewing the policy. And that goes into the cost. And we will renew you with no medical exam at the same rating. So that guy that was in the hospital with 2 heart attacks, right? This is the Kazmi's dad. He used to own a driving school. Everyone in Herndon learned how to drive through him. He was my client. Because he got that policy when he was 30 years old, right? His new policy was preferred, and he's in the hospital. So renewal rates is a very important conversation, and what I would do here is I would have, like I just sent him, I quickly looked through my policies. This is one that I found, right? He can show you a renewal rate in a policy. This is real, okay? So these people said, they're dentists, and they said, we're good, we already have term, right? And I said, well, can I look at it? And then this is what I saw, right? So this is a policy from Prudential. It was a good price. It was $1 million policy. $1 million policy, right? And then down here, you can see years 1 through 30. It's $13.40. There's no annual renewal after that. If you want to keep it, you pay $63,000 after that.
Oh.
I think it's like a 1 premium whole life something crazy, right? That you have to do. But what if they don't want to do that? Right? What if they're really sick and then, but they can't come up with 60,000? Or I mean, it's crazy. You know, if you're paying, this is about $100 a month, make it go to, you know, $500 a month, $600 a month, which is $6,000 per year. Here, the only option you have if you want to keep that term is you pay 60 grand. Now, you think they knew that? No. Let's go next. No agent representation. This is one that I talk about a lot. So your wife has two options. She can call an 800 number, dial 1 for English, 2 for Spanish, talk to someone she doesn't know, convince them that her husband just died, they're gonna give her pushback, they're gonna send her paperwork, it's gonna be hard to fill out, it's gonna go back and forth with the paperwork a bunch of times because that's what they're gonna do, and then it's gonna take a minute for that money to pay out, and then it finally pays out, and you know, would you consider your wife a financial expert, Dante?
No.
Right? Most people, they win the lottery and we hear stories about people losing tens of millions of dollars in a matter of years because they don't know what to do with the money, and we want your spouse to try to stretch out 500 grand for the next 20 years without any financial advice. Or she can call me, she can call my cell phone, I'll do the paperwork, I'll push the insurance company to make that payout, you know, in 10 to 14 days, and then I'll help her invest the money so that we can stretch it out for as long as possible and it can potentially last forever. Which one sounds better to you? I've had scenarios where, you know, Sheila's talked about this, where I had a client with Primerica and AIG. We paid out, AIG didn't. And I helped them fight AIG for a whole year, but I couldn't get them to pay out. Finally, they gave up. Right? And that was an internet policy that they had no representation. And after Sheila talked about it the other day, I was, or maybe she asked me about it, I was looking through the text messages with the client, and it was crazy. I'll make screenshots of that one day. But agent representation is big in many, many ways because we're going to fight to make sure that that policy pays out. Another thing is it gets really tricky in a period of incontestability. I don't know why most of my policies that pay out are within the first 2 years. And there's a burden of proof that you have to, you know, come up with in the first 2 years, right? It's not like after 2 years they just cut a check, they don't care what happened. But first 2 years, in, you know, it's state law, insurance law, they're going to really make sure. I've also had multiple international claims. And because there's a lot of fraud with people saying that they're dying and fake death certificates, that takes time and energy, right? So having agent representation is huge in that scenario as well. And by the way, this isn't all a bunch of, you know, data points to justify why we're so expensive. That's not actually the case. In many cases, we're cheaper than the internet, okay? So there's different classes. There's people that have $1 million that are overweight, and maybe we're not as competitive there, but then there's someone who wants 500,000 that's 35 and preferred, and maybe we're super competitive there. So it's not, you can't generalize that we're more expensive or we're cheaper, right? We're not the cheapest, we're also not the most expensive, but in many scenarios, we will be cheaper than the competition. Make sense?
Yep.
Any questions about this before I bring up Shaq? Jack, you ready?